So yeah, what did you make of the protesters? Well, that's maybe a question first. Is what would you call the people that were storming Capitol Hill? Because there's been a lot of debate if they're terrorists or not.
Well, I guess it is a form of terrorism in a way, isn't it? I
Mm,
mean, essentially, if that was, say, a Muslim person, storming the Capitol with weapons, they would immediately
mm,
be called a terrorist. I don't think there would be any two ways about it. It's a hard one because I think, on one hand, yes, they are just protesters. They want to keep the president in. They
mm,
support the Republican supporters. But at the same time, I just think the argument that people are trying to put across is the fact that if that was any other race, it would be a
yeah,
whole different scenario. So if that was Black people, we saw what happened with the Black Lives Matter movement. There was thousands of police deployed across America, thousands of almost armed forces deployed. And then when it's the white kind of protesters, there wasn't
mm,
as many police there. It took them a long time to respond to it. 5 people did lose their lives, granted, but at the same time, I think the argument people are trying to put across is the double standard of
yeah.
when it's white protesters, they're just protesters. But like I said, if that was a Muslim person going in, or a Muslim group of people going into Capitol Hill or
Mm,
Washington or anywhere really, any major public building, they would probably be called terrorists because those
mm.
people did have weapons as well, I believe. So
Yeah,
some
I
of
just
them.
feel it does feel like with the Black Lives Matter protests, the majority of them were peaceful protests, and there was so much police deployed for those. Whereas this one, it was planned. Like they knew these protesters or terrorists were coming. They maybe didn't know they were going to storm the parliament, but they at least knew there was going to be a big crowd. So it just seemed like why wasn't there a bigger police presence? And it does seem to me like it is because they're white. And if they were, say, Muslim or Black, I think we'd be seeing a lot more deaths than just the five. I think we would be seeing a lot more police brutality anyway.
Yeah, I think they find it easy to justify. I think that's the double standard people are trying to get across to try to raise awareness about is the double standard really in society where if it's a white person, it's still maybe that age-old stigma of, oh my God, Black people are so dangerous. It's that unconscious bias, or oh my God, Muslim people are all terror. It's that unconscious, like I said, bias that's
Mm-hmm.
maybe still perpetrated in our society, which maybe even, people don't actually realize. But I think that, like I said, I think that's the main issue that people are trying to get across to governments, to officials, to other people, is just you can see why people would be annoyed
Mm-hmm.
with the storming of Capitol Hill, essentially.
Yeah. The thing I found funny, I think it was in a meme, was the people that were storming Capitol Hill are the same people that were getting angry at people like the NFL players and basketball players taking a knee in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, saying that they're going against the American flag and disrespecting the American flag, whereas they've just stormed the Parliament building. Basically, they're knocking over American flags and they're sitting in like the Speaker of the House kind of seat where no one else is supposed to sit, and it's almost like they're disrespecting the Constitution now. They're disrespecting the flag, but no one's kind of saying that.
Yeah, I think it's
Um,
almost don't make a right argument, is that?
yeah,
You've got to find better ways. If you're saying that one group of people are wrong for the way they've handled something, then instead of doing the exact same thing, really you should be exercising or leading by example and saying, okay, well, this is what I would do, and finding ways to kind of prove your point, which is you can handle things in a different way as they wanted all of the Black Lives Matter protesters to do. Again, it's like, well, what was the alternative for
mm,
Black Lives Matter? When they've done the same thing, if not arguably more violently or aggressively. So what was their alternative for Black Lives Matter when it's such
mm,
a big issue that affects so many people in America?
yeah. And what do you think about Trump's kind of handling now? Because I feel like he's starting to ease off a bit because people are calling for his removal.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's just kind of accepted defeat. I mean, there's not
Yeah.
really much he can do. Even his own
Mm,
party, even Mike Pence. I think that was
mm,
the final nail in the coffin when Mike Pence said, I accept Joe Biden as president, and I would never go against the Constitution. I would never go against, the US government legislation, and you have to kind of accept the next person gracefully. I think when Mike Pence said that, he kind of knew probably that he'd lost his final ally, or at least his final ally was kind of saying, okay, come on, we've had our time, we're defeated, and that's just how it's gone. I think it is probably easing off, as you said, but like I said, I don't really think he has much choice. I mean, the only other choice would literally be to chain himself to the radiator in the White House, and it's not going to look good for his image. I think people forget he's a businessman first, and he still has a lot of these businesses on the outside. So he still needs to uphold some form of image to the world. And also, it would look weak, I think, in any scenario to, try and not leave the White House at this stage.
What do you think about him being banned on social media? Do you think that's a good call?
It's that, see, I've went back and forth with this. I was doing a bit of research on this last night. I was doing a bit of research. I want to do my own little video on what's next for Trump. So I was doing my research last night and kind of figuring out, okay, well, what's next for him? I mean, I'm really on the fence, and I would say that he deserves it. And yes, the way he was acting the other day, he did kind of incite a lot of that, the storming of Capitol Hill. But at the same time, it is that argument of where are we going as a society towards freedom of speech. So although I think, yes, he deserves to be suspended from Twitter. Also, the wording of Twitter is very weird. They're like, he's permanently suspended. So does that mean that, why don't they just say it's been deleted? Like, so does that mean you can get it back? What does permanently suspended mean? Is that forever? Or they've not said, oh, it's been deleted per se. But I don't know. I would say he deserves that right now. And I think he does use Twitter a lot, as we've seen over the past 4 years, to push his agendas, to kind of incite, not hatred, but opposition between, the two parties. We all know people jokey tweets from the toilet and things like that. He was constantly on Twitter. But I think it speaks more to where we're going. The only reason I'm saying I'm not too sure, I think it's because it speaks to where we're going as a society in terms of freedom of speech, and where's the line? Where's the invisible line with freedom of speech, So I think, yes, he should be suspended, but I think this will raise, and I can see this going into a larger conversation in time over where society is going with freedom of speech, and to how powerful these social media sites actually are, and do we live our lives now mostly on social media? I think it's just ingrained in our lives now. Our personalities are almost virtual, especially with lockdown.
Yeah. The issue I had with the social media thing is I agree that he should be suspended at least temporarily for kind of promoting the violence. But anytime a business does something like this, does something political, it just seems to me it's so like ingenuine, just because it's a business, they're trying to make money. They wouldn't do this if this wasn't going to make them any money. Like, more people are going to be happy, and people are going to share this and say, oh, good on Twitter, good on Facebook. It makes them look good. So I can't feel it's just a bit like not quite genuine.
I never thought about it in that way. I mean, of course, you could be right. You're probably right. It probably does make them a lot more money because they know millions of people. I mean, we don't even get a vote in American politics, but UK is heavily involved. We love to watch what's going on. I didn't think about it in that way, but like I said, I think it just raises questions as to how powerful and how much of our lives are now dictated by social media.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Trump now is they're calling for him to be removed from office, either like Mike Pence to enact the 25th Amendment or to impeach him. And I just keep on thinking, I mean, we're about 10 days away from Joe Biden being inaugurated. Yeah. Just wait until that, and then Donald Trump's a private citizen after that. You can prosecute him after that. I mean, he's talking about pardoning himself, so he knows he's done something wrong. And I think that that's why he wanted another term, because I think he's really nervous that he's going to get some legal trouble.
Well, this is what I based a lot of my research on last night. So sources are saying that he actually probably won't ask for a pardon, because then the only other person in history who's done that, only other president in history who has asked for a pardon was Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
And I think the reason he won't do that is there's only 10 days.
Thank God.
I know, I was like, oh God, no. There's only 10 days to go. To Mike Pence would have to invoke that, it would come down to his vice president to kind of invoke that. I don't think Mike Pence would, I mean, although he's kind of put the nail in the coffin, I don't know if he would want to be the one to go against some of his supporters. It would reflect badly on him as well. And three, it would mean that he would be admitting that he's done something wrong. And as we know, Trump is a chronic narcissist. And for a narcissist to admit that they've done something wrong, it's more unlikely, I think the sources are saying, or the newspapers in America say it's probably more unlikely, because that would be him admitting that he's done something wrong. And I think in his head, he probably doesn't feel like he has. These are his beliefs, and he's stuck by them till the bitter end. And no president in history really has outright come out and say, yes, I have done something horribly wrong, because then that would be showing them to be weak leaders, and none of them want that. So,
and what do you think's next for Trump after the presidency? There's like talk of his Trump News Network or going back to The Apprentice.
Do you know, I could see him. I don't know if he'd go back to The Apprentice. I think his ego probably feels like he's outgrown The Apprentice a little bit. Trump News Network, I could probably see that happening, because he'll be providing a platform for his supporters to voice their opinions. But it would be, as we all know, it would probably be a very right-wing platform. I highly doubt he would give left-wingers a fair voice. I was reading up last night, and again, I don't know, just a disclaimer, I don't know if any of this is fact, I don't know if any of this is true, but I was reading last night on Global News that there is an indictment out for him in New York against one of his companies. But again, what will happen, it's not been proven whether he's guilty or not guilty or anything like that, but there is one lawsuit against one of his companies. I think it's his investment firm, his financial investment firm. So he does have that awaiting him on the other side. But again, it's not been determined whether he's guilty or not guilty. It's in progress. I don't know. I'm not too sure, to be honest, what he'll do. Whether he'll be kind of go and live the quiet life, I guess one could hope, but at the same time, I highly doubt it, because it's Donald Trump. So I don't think this is the last thing. And did he not tweet out the other day? He was like, "We will not be silenced," or something like that.
Yeah. I think the news network's probably the most likely, because I think even Fox News are starting to become a bit too, like, not far right enough for him. Like, they are starting to like disagree with him or cut him off when he's like saying things that aren't facts. So I think the news network's probably his next step, because he wants a voice, and if he's suspended from all these social media places, he'll just make his own network.
Exactly, he's got the money and the means to do it. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it probably will go to a news network or some form of outlet where he can freely say his views or put across his opinions without any sanction. I mean, it's his. But the only problem with that is obviously the chances of left-wing people, it might be even like the old Fox, where they would invite left-wing guests on, and the left-wing guests would kind of just get shouted. Who was that presenter again? I should know this. The one who used to be really hard on the left-wing.
The one that
fired in the end.
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly.
Bill O'Reilly. You know, I could see it very much being more of a proving thing for him, more so than an actual legitimate news network, because news is meant to be mostly impartial, you know.
Why do you think for the news, why do you think it's starting to become more polarized? Because you've got so many different news networks, and they used to have only, say, like 5 or 10, and the way that they would make money and get viewers was to stay down the middle. But it seems now it's just like Fox News went further right, then CNN went further left. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a split in society, essentially. We have become a very left or right society, and while that's always been there, you've always had the liberals and the conservatives. You're seeing it even more so. People are taking a very solid stance and people are unwilling to budge now. Whereas before, most people would vote Labour. You've got a lot of old Labour supporters now voting for Conservative, which 20 years ago they would have said, I would never vote for Conservatives, but now they are. So there's been a shift in politics. But as we all know, newspapers make money through politics. We all know Rupert Murdoch. We all know Rupert Murdoch is very close to prime ministers, the government. If not, you could argue that he probably runs more of the government than the government runs the government. What gets put in the papers, especially over here, maybe less so in America, but especially over here, what gets put in the papers, it has the power to dictate what happens next in politics. It swings people's opinions. So of course it's smart of papers in a way to align themselves, or publications or broadcasters to align themselves sometimes with a political stance. It makes sense, and because it makes them money, and they get sources, and what they get back from it is probably greater than if sometimes they were impartial. I'm not saying if that's right or wrong. I'm just saying I can see why we have went that way.
Why do you think conspiracy theories have grown so much? Because people say that conspiracy theories have been around for ages, but not to this scale, I don't think. They're growing so much, and more people are believing, like QAnon in America and the 5G conspiracy theory about COVID.
Social media.
Yeah.
It's easy to even, and again, this could be a conspiracy, I don't know if this happens, but it's easy for people. I don't know if you watched The Social Dilemma.
I did, yeah.
Favorite documentary today.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's great, and it really, even now, I still find little bits out of it that pique my interest. But I think you could even say, it's easy for anybody to spread misinformation now. Like you're saying, Donald Trump has used social media as a way to put his message across, and people take from that what they will. So, and it leaves room to be misinterpreted. I mean, you can't explain yourself fully in 120 characters. So people can now just tweet out a couple of words. People say, oh my God, well, that means that. And other people go, well, no, that means that. Also, and if we're talking about conspiracy theories, like the 5G network and things like that, who knows where that really started from? Who actually put that out on the internet? Was it just somebody sitting in their house and they've done a bit of research on the Chinese government, so they've put that online? Or was it a bigger power? You don't know. So I think it's easy now for people to sit behind a screen on an anonymous account and put things out there. So it's definitely social media, because like I said, we live now behind a screen. So you don't need to be accountable for really what you're saying. You can set up a fake account and you can put anything out there that you want to put out there.
I think they were saying, I don't know if it was in The Social Dilemma, but it was definitely the guy that created it, Tristan Harris. I think it was on maybe the Joe Rogan podcast. He was talking about that it's easy for someone to believe conspiracy theories based on their kind of circle of people around them. So if you had someone, say, in the deep south in America who's in a town of everyone's telling them this one thing, this is how the world is, then you're going to go onto the news networks and all your people on social media are going to be confirming everything you're saying. So it's quite easy to understand how people can get sucked into it and not look at them in such a negative light that they're just like, people like will just like call them idiots or something like that. But it's very easy to see how that happens. But like it's an echo chamber kind of thing.
Yeah, it just kind of tumbles on and it grows arms and legs, and like people can put out anything they want to, and like you say, it's like an echo chamber. And I mean, this goes into a completely different topic, but I think it goes back to, I've been doing a lot of study on social media lately, and I think it goes back to, it's such a big part of our lives now. We practically, especially with lockdown, we're almost forced online, where all of our, or at least 95% of our interactions are online. So it kind of calls into question social media sites as well, regulation. How do you regulate without diminishing free speech? That's why I was saying with the Donald Trump and the Twitter thing, I agree as just a person that yes, he should be removed from Twitter because he was inciting violence, he was encouraging at least violence. I mean, he would say that he wasn't, but when you're saying to them, "Oh, we love you," they're like, "Well, if the president of the United States is saying that it's okay, or he doesn't seem too bothered about it, then they feel larger than, their opponents, essentially, or more important." But I just think it goes into how social media sites are regulating without removing free speech. And what is free speech anymore?
Yeah, I think well the other thing is that before, when people say we've always had conspiracy theories, before we'd maybe have that one guy in the town that thought like ridiculous things, and we just kind of, oh, he's just that guy. We just ignore him. But now, like social media has given that guy the platform to either speak to loads of people or find other people that think like him, and then they grow, and that's what social media has done.
Exactly, and anybody now can create an audience if you work hard enough at it. And like you're saying, he can either build his own platform and build an audience, sometimes of maybe hundreds of thousands of people, or you just go and you find other people and you feel justified. And I think that's what they're talking about in social media development as well, and societal development, is that. And when going back to your question on why do you think we're kind of so, left and right and separated now, it's because people are unwilling to listen to an alternative point of view. We would rather group ourselves with people who think like us, which is natural in a way, but we'd rather group ourselves with people who think like us, and that makes us feel validated, right? So you don't need to now with social media listen to an alternative viewpoint, because you've got 100 people who think like you and they're validating your opinion. So you're right fighting. In psychology, it's called right fighting. So yeah.
I think that's where we're heading. We're heading, if we keep on going the way we're going, we're heading for the failure of democracy, not because the right are evil, not because the left are evil, but because we can't listen to each side and either like we can't agree to disagree. Like it has to be like, you're wrong, I'm right, and you're the worst, you're ruining everything. And it's just it's not going to work. And it's politicians in America anyway are almost contributing to that as well. They're becoming more polarized as well.
Yeah, and it's sad in a way, in my opinion. I'm someone who really does try and listen to alternative viewpoints. I don't know whether that's because I studied journalism. You have to swallow sometimes your own opinions and your own pride, and you've got to listen to other people. And I'm just like that anyway. I like to kind of weigh up both sides of the coin and make my own decision. I seldom follow trends. I very rarely just follow something because all of my friends are following it. I'll weigh it up and then I'll make a decision. But yeah, I think failure of democracy. I never even thought about it again. I've not thought about it in depth like that, but I can see where you're going with that. Yeah, definitely.
I think it's also the fact that it's teams now. It's not your opinion. So if you're left, then that's your team. So even if you disagree with some things on it, you have to follow their policies, all of their policies, and you can't think like the other side on anything. Where that's what, like what you're saying. That's what I like to do is like not all of my opinions or not all of my political opinions are left. Some of them would be considered maybe a bit right or center. So I think that's where people are. That's why another reason why we're going so polarized is because we're just following our team, and anything that the other team do is just the worst. And it's almost like sports. It's like football teams. You're following your team. That's all you're going to be focused on. Yeah,
and the problem with that, I think, a little bit is that you're all like I was saying before, you feel validated, right, by the opinions of your team. So, and I always try and get across to people, we all have our own perception of reality. So it's getting a bit deep. I'm not going to go spiritual, but we all have our own perception of reality. We all live in our own reality. We've all got our own past. We've all got our own circumstances. Some of us have more money than others. So of course our realities are all going to be different. And I think nowadays you've got people who are like, no, but my perception of reality is right and yours is wrong. Like, I'm just trying to think of an example, but you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, I'm right, you're wrong. My perception is the right way to go forward. But what do they say about dictators? Every dictator went in with the best intention.
Yeah.
Every dictator wanted to make the world a better place or something like that, because in their perception, what they're doing is right. So I think you've got to be really careful with that a little bit, because we've seen in history dictators who think they're doing the right thing for society, and it's really not. There's always going to be somebody who loses out on one person's way of managing society. So it's always going to be one demographic.
I think there's one thing that the far left are doing where they're focusing a lot on lived experience rather than facts, or they're outweighing it so that lived experience is more important than facts, and that just becomes an issue because you're basically saying that all knowledge up until this point is either like racist or sexist or something like that. We need to listen to people's experience and opinions, and that to me is driving the other side, the far right, to say, well, look what the left are doing. They don't even care about facts. So come and join us. And it's like both sides are pushing each other further and further towards their side.
And where do we meet in the middle? You know, there's got to be some compromise. I think, like you're saying, both sides are doing the same thing essentially, because you think you're right about something, then the other side is also going to say, but hang on, actually, no, this is how it is, and you're wrong. And it's just constant, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. So where's the compromise? Is it going to be that we do have a centrist party in the future? Will we ever get to that point? I don't know. But yeah, I'm not too sure where the future's going. I don't think anyone really knows. We're on thin ice at the moment, I think, with democracy and politics. I don't think anyone really knows how it's going to pan out in 10 years' time. I mean, I don't think anyone does. I don't think our parents looked in the 80s, 20 years in the future, and they would have expected, mobile phones or, Tony Blair or Boris Johnson. But at the same time, they probably didn't predict that we'd be in this position, so we probably don't know how it's going to pan out. But yeah, it's worrying times. It's exciting times, especially for a journalist. There's a lot to talk about, but it's very worrying times as a human being because you just don't know where it's going.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to talk about this, because my original plan for January was to talk to some sort of like positive philosopher, so that I can like show people how to think positively for the next year. And then people started storming the Capitol Hill, and I was like, I can't just ignore that. I'm going to have to talk about that. It's too big a story. Do you think?
But I hope I'm doing okay.
Do you think Joe Biden's that center politician that we need? Do you think he's going to be the answer to it? That's not a good sign.
I mean, his old politics you could look at and say, yes, he was a very centerfold voice. But then also people say the Democrats aren't really left, don't they? The people also argue that the Democrats aren't really a traditional kind of left wing. Yes, but I think he'll continue to alienate, which again, I'm more of left wing, if we want to say that. I think he'll continue to alienate the right, especially after Trump. I don't think they're going to go quietly. I don't think that the modern right, as we've seen it in the past 4 to 5 years, I don't think they're going to go, okay, now Trump's out, now I support Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
So while he's in term, I definitely think he's probably going to continue to alienate that demographic by supporting the things that he believes in. So I don't know. I can't really answer that question in full. I think we just need to wait and see what comes of it. I think it'd be nice for America to have a younger president, I have to say, and that's nothing.
I think Kamala Harris is probably she'll be president at some point, I think.
Yeah, hopefully. It'd be nice to see a female in power, and also it'd be nice to see a younger demographic who's maybe a little bit more in touch with what's going on. Obviously, Joe Biden probably knows what's going on, but at the same time, how much of it is being fed through his advisors, the people who are watching society? How much of it does he really immerse himself in? We don't know. But yeah, well, I think we'll have to just wait and see. I'm always an optimist. I'm like, hopefully he does well.
Well, I think the two things I thought about Joe Biden was, one, the reason he won is because he's familiar. He's been around for ages. Like people keep
Yeah,
on making the old jokes, but he has been around for so long. People
yeah,
know who he is.
yeah.
And he was going against Bernie Sanders. So you were either going to vote for someone who's going to be really radical and very against establishment, or someone familiar who's just going to give you exactly what you expect. You're probably not going to vote for him after the 4 years. He's a one-term president. I think he knows that. But the other thing I think with him is, I can't remember who said it. It was on another podcast. Someone said that he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, where he he's going to do the exact same thing that politicians do, where he'll give kind of tax cuts to the rich, but he'll hide behind this kind of, like, his platform was for running for president was going to be like climate change. He's going to do the most for climate change, and he's focusing on like the left policies, but that's like the surface. I think you need to at least be cautious about his policies and look behind the policies and look kind of behind the curtain. And hopefully Kamala Harris is pretty progressive, so hopefully she'll keep him on that kind of right track that people want him to be.
I think that's what I was kind of trying to say. It's like you need to kind of look behind the policies a little bit and what does he really stand for. I think it's kind of like Keir Starmer in our country. It's kind of, I think people know he's probably never going to be prime minister. I mean, let's be honest, he probably won't be prime minister. I don't think he's got enough backing from the left or well, let's call it liberal and conservatives. But he's a nice, calming stopgap presence. He's not familiar here, but he's, that kind of stopgap between the Jeremy Corbyn era and the Theresa May era to the, the new future, whatever that'll be. So I think Joe Biden, I like Joe Biden, I do. I've always kind of, rooted for him a little bit in the background, but I think we'll just have to see how much, especially with Black Lives Matter, my fear is, was he using that a little bit to gain votes? I mean, of course, politicians need to have strategy and, they need to gain votes somehow, but it would be good to see, if he really means what he's saying, it would be good to see him actually follow through with these beliefs that he's kind of been spouting out over the past year or so.
Yeah. How are you looking to 2021? Like events going forward, 2021, do you think are we going to be better than 2020?
Yeah, I think like I said, I'm an optimist. I like to be optimistic. I definitely think that 2021 is going to be better. And in the end, not right now. I think this is very much a concept. Like any year, though, we forget time doesn't really exist in the way that we think it does. It's not 365 years. Sorry, days. Days. God, get it together. 360 days. Technically, they don't really exist. It's just a calendar that we made up. So technically, things aren't just gonna stop because it's January the 1st. The universe knows that it's January the 1st, so he's going to erase the past year. I think we've definitely got a lot of work to do, especially with obviously COVID and getting out of that. I think we need to get out of COVID before we can accurately depict what's going on in the greater world. Right now, with everyone kind of locked down, I mean, who knows where it'll go. But I'm an optimist. I think we will get out of the whole kind of COVID situation, lockdown, but global economies are going to be affected. So, and obviously that does affect politics as well. So global economy is going to be affected. I think we just need to see how things fare in the next kind of 4 months. And I think after that, it will be a better year. But it all depends on governments, the economy, even people's mental health,
Yeah. I think there's just a funny thing I keep on seeing on social media. It's almost like people are expecting, well, it's 2021 now, so it's so much better because it's a new year. But it's still, it just carries on the way that time does, like you're saying. And I think people shouldn't expect it just to be a good year because it's a new year. You need to have some sort of involvement in making it a good year for yourself. So the thing I keep on saying is follow the rules and we'll get through it. But you need to follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules and you keep infecting other people, then we're not going to get out of this any quicker.
Yeah, and I think our priority number one really is getting out of lockdown and getting back to some form of normality. And I think then we'll see kind of what we're left with. It's like any kind of natural disaster, you've got to clear all the debris. And then you see what you're left with and what you've got to work with. And although people, I mean, COVID is slightly political, because it's affected everyone's lives. It's affected businesses. It's affected mental health. It's affected how people have seen or saw the government as well. So I think we need to see what we're left with. But I think up until about May, I think we'll probably be grappling with coronavirus a lot still. That'll still dominate headlines. And I think after that, once as well, Biden's in American politics, we'll see how that fares over the next 6 months, I think. And then I'm sure by the end of next year, we'll be singing a whole different hymn sheet, or for ill. We'll probably look back on this year and say something about this year. You know, I think coronavirus has taught us that you just never know what's around the corner at all.
Yeah, but we're both optimistic about 2021.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I am. I mean, I've been trying to make the most out of lockdown as much as I possibly can. I would advise anyone else to do the same. You know, people message me on social media and say, oh, you know, I just don't know what to do. I'm so bored. I'm getting really down about it. While mental health, I completely take that seriously, and I am an advocate of positive mental health. I do think I say to people, I say, well, what do you enjoy to do? You know, what do you not get time to do when you're usually working? Or do you like to paint? Do you like to bake? Do you like to, you know, find something that you really enjoy? And it's not a solution, but at least it's a band-aid for now, you know.
Well, that's a good note to end on. So thanks for your time. And I imagine in the next few months there'll be some other big story that we'll need to talk about.
Yes, there will be. I'm sure there's going to be plenty to talk about in 2021. But no, thank you so much for having me.